Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by T.A. Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So I've always said that the arts play a major role in driving community and vibrancy. I make a point to spend time with the local arts scene, and I managed to find some fantastic people doing really cool stuff. Today we get to meet a musician playing the state, and he's here to discuss the music scene in Michigan and what it's been like post-pandemic. Mr. Sean Anthony Sullivan, welcome to the show, Sean.
Chris, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, let's start off with your background. Now, you're a native Michigander, but you fled the scene for a little bit, and now you're back. Talk about that for a minute.
I am. So I'm from the area, grew up in the Lansing area, and went to MSU, proud Spartan. And, I graduated from college and was running a business here, doing a lot of web development and video production work. And the economy was a little suspect back around those times. And I had an opportunity to move out to the West Coast in Oregon and pursue startup in the video game industry, actually. So I packed everything I owned in my little compact car and hit the road, moved out there, and had a lot of great adventures out on that end of things. And life happened in a lot of ways. So, to kind of bring things full circle, during the pandemic, just kind of took a survey of everything in life and what was important, what mattered, and there's a lot of things about Michigan that I really, really loved and missed. And after some discussions with my wife, who is an Oregon native, we decided to move the family to the Lansing area and be part of what's going on here once again. So very, very excited to be back in the area. Right
on. Okay, so now talk about the music. So you mentioned your day job, which maybe we'll see how long your day job lasts based on the quality of the music you're putting out. But how did the music kind of start in you? And then lots of people play music as a hobby, and then only very few people say, you know what? I'm going to kind of go for it and put yourself out there on stage in front of crowds of people you don't know. So talk about that journey.
Yeah, 100%. So, a lot of musical stories start out with, I was born and raised in a musical family, so I try to avoid to go down that road, off the
Were
bat
you?
here. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. My dad is a classically trained musician. He has a PhD in music.
Holy wow.
He was band director. He actually conducted the Lansing Concert Band. So he
didn't know that.
Very, very much performing arts. Yes. And so I was raised in this crucible of performing. It was kind of, music was always a part of my life. And so, he was always one of the biggest inspirations for me as a musician up and coming. Some of my earliest memories are watching him play a guitar in our house with his amplifier cranked up playing Johnny B. Good. I'm like, is that, who is that? Oh, that's Chuck Berry. I need to learn about Chuck Berry, right?
Wow, okay.
So, with that, to answer your question, performing was never really a question for me, all the way from piano recitals, sixth grade talent show. I want to go play the piano in front of people.
And you wanted to.
I wanted to.
Because there's other stories where it's like I was raised in this and I didn't want to do it, but was pushed into it.
Yeah. And that's the thing with, growing up in that environment was learning that music is not really something to be held privately. It's something that's to be shared and collaborative and whatnot. So I think there's a lot of value in, doing it by yourself, of course. Some of my most powerful moments have been writing alone in a room that's dimly lit, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, I feel that music is designed to be shared.
Right. Right on. Okay. So you, let's talk about your influences a little bit, because I've done a little research on this conversation, and I love your influences. And that's why I wanted to have you on. So talk about, you mentioned Chuck Berry, but it's rock and roll.
Yeah, 100%. You can't grow up in this part of the world and not have an appreciation for the rock and roll.
Right.
And I'm always very careful to say and roll. You can't forget about the roll. There's a Keith Richards quote, everybody's talking about rock, but don't forget about the roll.
Interesting.
And,
okay, I don't know that one.
Yeah. So, the fact of the matter is I was a young kid at the roller skating rink. Bob Seger comes on the PA amplified old time rock and roll.
Yep.
And I was sold. I'm like, this is what loud amplified rock and roll music sounds like. Why I'm getting my groove on roller skates, and you kind of get hooked at that point. But another thing is, going to see music and having it hit you. Bands, I bring up the Black Crowes. Seeing Black Crowes when I was in my teens live was a very pivotal moment for me because, those guys set up on stage with a wall of sound.
Yes, they do.
And it hits you.
Yep.
And it hits you, and it's something, it's undeniable what it does to you emotionally, spiritually, I would even say. So there's that aspect of it. And then, Bruce Springsteen is someone that so many singer-songwriters cite as being an influence. I think that's for a lot of reasons. For me, it's really just the breadth of his body of work. He'll go from, something like Nebraska, his record that's very, very stripped down singer-songwriter-esque. It's not polished and bubblegum in any sense, to something like his Pete Seeger sessions, which are very worldly, Irish sort of music, and just that, the genre, shifting and that sort of thing. And that's something that I really admire about his music. And
And then you had the Born in the USA type anthem-y.
I mean, of
about
course,
as poppy as he got, but
and the music has meaning.
Yes,
it's not fluff in any sense.
I was exposed to Bruce early, and this is your show, not mine. But I'll tell you, back in the album days, we're back now in the album days. But his lyrics, he almost never repeated anything. So when they would print his lyrics, it was really, really long because nothing ever repeated. And there's so much content in his lyrics, and I don't know, you get lost in all of it. Growing up and I'm going to blank on some of the names, but I just, Darkness on the Edge of Town and some of these albums were just such anthems in my household too. So a big Bruce fan.
Yeah, 100%. And, you talk about the storytelling. That's I think about a lot of the artists who I would say, I grew up on the late 60s. Growing up, you had your parents' vinyl collection.
That's right.
You didn't have Spotify or any of this. And, whatever you could catch on the radio, those tastemakers were kind of deciding. But, so I was going through the Crosby, Stills, and Nash and all the Woodstock era stuff. And I always have to bring up horn bands, Chicago. So with my dad in his profession, in that limited vinyl collection, believe it or not, a large portion of that collection was promo vinyls for marching band arrangements for pop music, right? So what's the marching band going to play at halftime this year's shows? And one of my young memories was hearing this Power of Love, Huey Lewis and the News arrangement played by a marching band, and the way that melody just popped right through that arrangement. And so I listened to a lot of marching band music, believe it or not, growing up, and just kind of dissecting what makes it cool. What makes a song, and the melody, and then obviously Chicago, and 25 or 6 to 4 is probably the reason I really play guitar.
Right.
Yeah, that song. So.
Such a great song, such a great album. We could talk about that stuff all the time, but I'm not sure our audience is going to hang on for all of that. So so we talked about your influences and the way you kind of learned about music. The stuff that you write and that you play, is it pretty singularly focused, or would you say you also stray genres yourself?
Yeah, labels are something that's always really hard for to describe your music, right? So I always just talk about rock and roll because rock and roll means so much to so many different people. And today where we're at, we talk about genres, and a lot of it goes into the Americana, even the country format. So whatever terrestrial radio is labeling, I live in that rock and roll world. I'm a rock and roll guy. Right on.
That's perfect. In fact, if I remember correctly, and I'm going to butcher it, so I want you to tell me, how do you self-describe your music?
Yeah, it sounds like Bob Seger helping the Wallflowers work on their muscle car.
That's awesome. I read that and I'm like, okay, picture painted. Well done.
Yeah, I'm a business guy too. You got to have an elevator pitch, right? So that's what it is. So
that's great. So now, you talk about rock and roll, and I remember we've talked about a couple of quotes you talked about the great Keith Richards, and I'll talk about the great Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters and previously of Nirvana. He said in an interview, he talked about where did all the rock bands go? And I sat about and thought about that for a second, and you listen to anything that's been made probably 10 years now. And I have found some singer-songwriter and some of that kind of stuff that's pretty recent, but I look at my sons who are in college and just beyond, and it is a lot of pop and rap, and it's cool. And there's a lot of really good new stuff coming out there, but singer, rhythm, lead guitar, bass, drums, guys in their garages pounding it out, that doesn't seem to be as prevalent as it used to be. That's not the music that seems to be capturing the young generation. Do you agree with that? Am I missing a part of the world, or what's your take on that concept?
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot. I have a few thoughts. So I've gone to some really remarkable EDM shows. I've had the opportunity to
EDM, okay.
I've seen some of the world's biggest name DJs perform live, and I have a lot of respect, and I understand why people are drawn to that. I mean, you get in that environment, and it's almost sensory overload in a way, all the lights and but that music is really powerful. With me, the beauty of rock and roll, you think about someone like, bring up Keith Richards again.
Yep.
You watch him do his thing. It's almost like he's on the razor's edge a little bit, the way he performs, because it's not prescriptive. It's not, you talk about Bruce Springsteen and his lyrics, and you're not going to get the same thing. There's a reason why people followed the Dead around for decades, because you weren't going to get the same thing show after show, and there's just this element. So the rock and roll aspect is, I think it has to have that. And there's a lot of, seeing a lot of venues and booking agents just in my travels or hearing through the grapevine that are really embracing that and love bringing that element to it. And so I think it's there. I think it's there. I think it's, I look back at me and what was really a turning point for me to just embrace rock and roll with open arms. And it was being in that environment with others and just having a guitar hit me in the chest. And unless you have that experience, maybe it's foreign.
Right. And it's probably there. Maybe it's lessened, but you also have to kind of build what people want, right? And so if there isn't as much, if 80% of the people loved rock and roll throughout the 70s and 80s and 90s or whatever, and grunge kind of came, you've got all these different genres that hit people at different times for different reasons. It seems like the artist will build whatever the people are looking for, right?
Yeah, it takes on different, puts on a different outfit,
right.
But that's why I use the word rock or the label rock and roll, because I do think it encompasses a lot. I would, talk about even some of the outlaw country is kind of founded in rock and roll, so,
yep.
That's why it gets tricky with genres and labels and that sort of thing. But yeah, 100%. It's out there, and there's a lot of clubs and breweries booking that are supporting that sound, and they know that their clientele wants that sound.
Right.
So it's really, really exciting to see. So I think we're coming back, and just one more tack on there. So I've actually had, conversations with people at Fender. I look at, I work in the online education industry. That's how I spend a lot of my waking hours. And, Fender, Gibson, some of these companies that manufactures instruments, they're really putting a lot of emphasis into building out materials to help people learn those, because you look back at, my generation, generations before, and a lot of it was the guitar gods, and that inspired you, right? And so we are seeing a generation, I'll cite Taylor Swift, I'll cite Ed Sheeran, people like this, they've actually done, John Mayer, of course, these people have done things to promote the desire to play those instruments. So while things maybe looked more dire, I feel like I feel like there's still a lot of people out there learning to play guitar.
That's right. Good.
Yep.
Well, I want to pause for a second and thank one of our great sponsors. And when it comes to creating commercial and residential spaces, there's no one I trust more than my friends at the Forsberg Real Estate Company. Brent Forsberg and his team have taken a holistic approach to creating environments that suit your needs while creating a foundation for a prosperous community. Since the 1950s, Forsberg has been a name to trust if you're looking to partner on a project, occupy a great space to live or work, or simply follow one of the great thought leaders of our state. Reach out to my friends at the Forsberg Real Estate Company by calling 517-349-9330 or check out their website at lansingrealestate.com. You won't regret it. So let's talk about your gigs. You talk about people, learning to play guitar. There is a rock and roll desire, right? So you're playing live shows now. First of all, did the pandemic, clearly nobody did shows during the height of the pandemic, but do you feel as we're kind of post-pandemic, that's all opening back up and there's a pent-up desire, like that people aren't resistant to live shows anymore?
There's 100%. There's a huge appetite out there for just experiences in general. You're seeing it with buying tickets to sporting events. The prices are right up there. And, so with live shows, people want to get out and see music. I know coming off of the pandemic, we'll just say fall 21, spring of 22, it seemed like every band you'd ever heard of was hitting the road.
Right.
Because everyone, in a lot of ways, a lot of them appreciated the reset, the hiatus, so to speak. It's just, what I've heard in talks with them, to kind of just reset and, survey what's important in life and kind of have that creative cycle, refresh, whatever you want to say.
Right.
But yeah, people are absolutely getting out and wanting to get in a room with other human beings and feel that energy again, and
right.
I'm right there with them.
I had a buddy who's in the art field talking about, after the plague came the Renaissance.
100%.
So if you get artists that are shut-ins for a period of time, there's going to be books written and plays written and songs written and poetry written. And then once everything opens back up, you're going to have this whole wave of content that's ready to hit the streets that, I think can be the counterbalance to being shut down for a period of time. So you're out there, is it hard to get shows, or is it, are there, there's a decent amount of music venues that are out there, but is it hard to find space and time to get out there and do it?
Yeah. So I'm a little bit of ground zero here in the Lansing area. Having recently moved home, I would say, to Michigan. And, so really working to establish myself and get my name out there to book those gigs, because, a lot of it, obviously you're a club owner, you have overhead, you gotta be able to fill the room.
Bring the right.
You got it. So, from that aspect, I'm definitely seeing some reception to what it is that I'm doing, which is exciting, with, gigs. I have one coming up here in November at Max Bar, the illustrious Max Bar. It's an institution in this part of the world.
Sure is.
And also some in Detroit area in next calendar year that really looking forward to. So no, it's happening. I think what's interesting is maybe some of those club owners, and I don't want, just anecdotally from what I'm seeing is they're booking a lot of tribute acts, a lot of things that are probably going to be a little bit more surefire. You're going to bring people in the door. So, someone like myself who's really focused on original music, it definitely introduces an interesting wrinkle where, I have to have that market appeal, obviously, they're business owners. So, working on that end of things.
But you, if I remember correctly, your live shows will also handle some covers. Is that right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, right.
You can't.
So it's a mix, right? Because people don't know your portfolio well enough to be drawn by that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's one of those things where I love playing covers, because a lot of times I look at my show, celebration of rock and roll is how I frame it. So obviously my music, I want to play my music. People, want to hear it. Yep. Sometimes, hopefully. And, but at the same time, I got to tip my hat to Clapton, the Allman Brothers, the bands that brought me to what it is that I do. And so people love to hear that. I love to hear that. I turned on a Bruce Springsteen live recording the other day, and he played Highway to Hell by AC/DC. And I'm like, hey, this is awesome. I didn't expect it, but it's really cool. And you love that from artists. You love to hear their take on it,
Right. And it's, exactly. You love to hear their take on it, right? Because I've heard some very unusual renditions of pretty famous songs by unassuming, it's like, I never thought that person would even be aware that song existed, yet they turned it into something of their own. That's just beautiful.
Yeah, and just to underscore that. So for me, it's not, some people may play covers out of necessity because that's what you have to do to get the gigs. For me, because I spend a lot of time in the recording studio. I'm a recording artist. I love recording. I love the process. I love to record covers. I love digging in. I just released a cover of Atlantic City by Bruce Springsteen. And I loved digging in on how is my arrangement going to differ and how am I going to explore this theme. And it's like this beautiful body of work. What can I do to not undermine it, to embrace it and take it to my interpretation, bring that forth. And so that's part of the artistic journey that I love.
That's awesome. Awesome. So now you have a portfolio of work. Where can people find Sean Anthony Sullivan's body of work to kind of hear what we're talking about?
Absolutely. SeanAnthonySullivan.com. I always encourage people to go there as kind of my hub.
And Sean is S-E-A-N.
S-E-A-N. Thank you. Yep. And, I'm try to be active on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube channel as well. I post videos on there, and I
haven't seen the YouTube channels, but I got your Spotify.
Yeah. Yep.
In heavy rotation.
Thank you. Yeah. All the streaming platforms. And that's one of the beautiful things about being an artist these days is the ubiquity. You can put your stuff out there and people can get it where they want it. So
got it. But the live shows are what kind of pays the bills in this day and age, right? The recording process, or like the way artists make money now, as opposed to like in the 80s and 90s, is very different. Is it not? I mean, I metaphorically, my recollection kind of was you went on tour to drive album sales, right? I mean, you obviously probably made money on the tour, but that drove record sales and you made money on record sales. Now there really aren't that many paid record deals because it's all kind of streaming, right? And you need to kind of go on tour to make your bread, right?
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of that from the record contracts that I'm aware of. They try to build in they call them a 360 deal where they're getting a little bit of the take on the tour and all this sort of thing. So absolutely, that's an aspect of it. I don't altogether see any of the innovations in that world to be a bad thing, though. You will hear some people lament where did the good old days? Yeah, exactly. And here's my thing is I don't have to fight for shelf space on Tower Records to make my stuff available, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, obviously Spotify is going to feature what they're going to feature, backroom deals and all that sort of thing. But as an independent musician, I can have my music presented in a playlist right there alongside of Springsteen. Again, we'll keep invoking his name. And, and so that's a beautiful thing to me is, gatekeepers can be bad for the creative process, right? If you're trying to placate what you think is marketable, and most artists don't want to do that. They want to do what their thing, because I think truthfully, what I find resonates the most with people is what I'm doing the most authentic to myself, and then the people will latch onto that because they can smell it.
Right. Fantastic. So Sean Anthony Sullivan, anything else you want to share about your musical journey and everything you've got going on?
We could go all day.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. Yeah, no, I just love being in this part of the world doing this. So thank you.
Awesome. So SeanAnthonySullivan.com. You can find all his streaming platforms and social media handles and get a taste of what rock and roll in 2023 looks like these days. Really been a pleasure having you on. All the best of success to you in the future.
All right, thanks, Chris.